There's a fire burning in Alberta, Canada, and the Dallas Stars are looking to put it out. On today's episode, I'll preview tonight's matchup versus the Calgary Flames. I'll talk about everything happening in the Flames organization, as well as give you a list of players to look out for and my overall predictions for tonight's game. It's another game day edition of Locked On Stars.
You're Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. Welcome back to the Locked On Stars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Dane Lewis. It is Thursday, November 4th. We are getting nice into the thick of things in November, and it is once again Dallas Stars game day. Big game coming up tonight against the Calgary Flames, and today's episode will be purely dedicated to covering that game and all of the events surrounding it. But before we do all that, I want to take a quick moment and say thank you for stopping by today's show. Whether you are a recurring listener or this is your first time here at Locked On Stars, I want to say thank you for stopping by. Thank you for making Locked On Stars your first listen of the day. Be sure to subscribe and follow the podcast wherever you get your podcasts at. Leave a review if you like what you hear. And also, you can subscribe to the show on YouTube. Just recently passed 50 subscribers there. That channel is continuing to grow. And it's a nice change of pace. Maybe sometimes you don't just want your podcast in audio form, but you want visuals as well. So be sure to subscribe and follow the podcast wherever you listen at. But without any further hesitation, let's jump into today's preview for tonight's game between the Dallas Stars and the Calgary Flames. Starting off, I want to talk about the Calgary Flames organization as a whole and kind of talk about where they stand as of right now in this young season. And it's been a minute since the Calgary Flames and Dallas Stars have matched up with one another. The last time these two teams saw each other was in August 2020 in the Edmonton bubble in the first round of the Western Conference playoffs, where ultimately Dallas won in 6 games. The first of many trials that the Dallas Stars faced on their way to a Stanley Cup Finals appearance. The Calgary Flames were no laughing matter in that first round series. There were many moments early on where it felt like the Stars could have very easily dropped that series to the Flames. But some big play down the stretch in some of the middle games of the series proved to be the difference maker for the Dallas Stars, and they were able to come out of that series on top over the Flames. And of course, the rest is history for how the playoffs went for Dallas. But that being said, it's been a while because these teams were separated by the realignment with the weird COVID season that took place last year. So they haven't seen each other since everything, was shut down and teams were playing in the bubble in Edmonton. So it's going to be really exciting to see these two teams match up once again. A really aesthetically pleasing jersey matchup, if I do say so myself. The green and white and the yellow and red and a little bit of orange just looks really nice on the ice, no matter how you slice that matchup up. But Calgary, speaking of red, is off to a red hot start this season. They are currently tied for third in points in the National Hockey League at 14. So they are doing quite well to start the year off. Their one regulation loss on their record was to their rivals, the Edmonton Oilers, who also have 14 points as of right now. So some pretty quality wins, and their one regulation loss is to a pretty quality opponent that they will see several times this season because they're rivals and they play in the same division. So don't expect the Calgary Flames to lose every single time they play the Edmonton Oilers this season. That should be a very fun series to keep an eye on if you're just a fan of good hockey. But like Dallas, Calgary has missed out on the playoffs. They missed out last season, and so they're hungry to get back to the postseason this year. And they have a very good chance of doing so, with a Pacific Division that maybe isn't the strongest. Many would say a few good teams like Edmonton, San Jose, and Anaheim off to a nice start so far this season. But other than that, the rest of the division seems to be a little lackluster at the moment. But Calgary and Dallas, both teams hungry to get back to the postseason after missing out last year. One of those teams is doing better than the others, and I think we all know who that is. But the biggest storyline surrounding this team is really happening off the ice as well as they've been playing as a team. This team finds themselves rumors have it as finalists to land Jack Eichel in some trade rumors. Jack Eichel, obviously one of the most talented young players in the entire National Hockey League, currently a part of the Buffalo Sabres organization, but there's been a lot of drama happening throughout the summer and through the early parts of this season. And Jack Eichel basically is looking to move on, and the Buffalo Sabres looking to move on from Jack Eichel as well. And Calgary has emerged as a finalist to potentially land Eichel in what would be a pretty big blockbuster trade. And obviously, it could be a risky trade because Buffalo would be looking to, add a franchise player or maybe two in return for Jack Eichel, because Jack Eichel is a franchise caliber player, one of the most gifted players that we've seen in a long time, a guy that on a good day at his best when he's fully healthy is probably in the same conversation as guys like Connor McDavid. And I don't think that that's too much of a hot take if you've watched him play when he's healthy and when he's at 100% and got his stuff going. So one of the guys that we've seen and that I've seen just doing some research at the center that Calgary would probably be losing and sending to Buffalo in return for Eichel is Matthew Tkachuk, brother of Brady Tkachuk, who the Stars have seen twice this season with the Ottawa Senators. But Matthew Tkachuk, a really good player for Calgary so far this season, would be a guy that many think would be leaving the Flames if this trade does go down. And Calgary, as of right now, is playing very, very well. They're playing great. They seem, like I said, an early season lock for the postseason in a pretty weak Pacific Division. And so, barring anything insane happening, barring any crazy injuries or anything else wild happening in that division, Calgary seems like, that they have the recipe set and that they just need to keep doing what they're doing in order to make a postseason appearance come springtime. And it's worth noting that Jack Eichel is in need of surgery on his neck that would likely leave him out for around 3 months. I mean, he has not had this surgery yet. So there's something that would happen once he gets to his new destination, new city of playing. And so, once the trade does go down, if it goes down, Eichel would need to arrive in Calgary, get surgery, and then he wouldn't be able to play for about 3 months. So probably till about March. So is it worth it for the Calgary Flames to give up a core piece like Tkachuk or somebody else that, could be on the table that maybe we don't know about at the moment, to get a guy who is very talented, very gifted, could contribute to this organization, and, be potentially a long time, impactful player for this organization, but wouldn't be able to play this season until March? Could Calgary maintain what they have while waiting for Eichel to come back from injury? These are kind of the questions circulating around the Calgary Flames at the moment. A lot of, potential for them to have a really big season, but maybe that would all come crashing down if they tried to make this trade, or maybe things would be okay. It's a high risk, high reward situation. That's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds, as if you're paying attention to a lot of the news cycles around the NHL. Coming up next, we'll take a little bit of a deep dive into the Calgary Flames roster, talk about some matchups and players to be on the lookout for in tonight's game. But before we do that, I want to take a moment and say thank you to one of the sponsors of today's episode, and that is BetOnline. BetOnline is back and better than ever with a new web interface for the start of the basketball season, with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. Head to the new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL hockey, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. Moving on to the next segment of today's episode of Locked On Stars, your first listen of the day. I want to take a moment and highlight some of the big names on this Calgary roster and maybe some matchups to be on the lookout for, because this is a very, very loaded Calgary Flames roster, especially offensively. They have really had no problem generating goals and points so far this season, which is something that I wish I could say about the Dallas Stars, but that is not the case. So Dallas will have their hands full defensively. And one of the big names on this team is actually one of the defensemen for the Calgary Flames. Oliver Shillington has been on fire, yes, pun intended, for Calgary as of late. He has a point in the last 4 games for the Flames so far. He's a second-round pick for the Flames back in 2015. Hasn't really had a breakout season yet, has shown flashes of potential, but I think this is the year that he's really looking to break out and bust out as one of the most elite young players in the league, kind of wanting to put his name in the conversation with guys like Adam Fox, Charlie McAvoy, Miro Heiskanen as a very talented young defenseman. And so far, he's doing just that. Like I said, a point in the last 4 games, having a phenomenal season so far. So Oliver Shillington, a guy to be on the lookout for the Calgary Flames. Matthew Tkachuk, a guy that I mentioned in the last segment, like I said, brother Brady Tkachuk from Ottawa. He's having a nice season for the Flames so far right now as well. He has 6 points. Plano, Texas native Blake Coleman is a member of the Flame squad this year. He was a guy that maybe, his name had been thrown around maybe a little bit of coming to Dallas. This offseason, he was a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning and won a championship with them last season. He's not putting up the biggest numbers so far this year, only 4 points, but he brings some valuable veteran experience, like I said, coming from a championship team. So always valuable to have a guy like that on your squad. So Blake Coleman, Dallas, Texas, Plano, Texas native. Just kind of cool noting that, there's a guy from the DFW Metroplex area on an NHL roster, even if it is not Dallas's roster. Just the NHL is so cool because people come from all over the world, and the fact that there's a guy from our own backyard, a lot of really good hockey talent here in the DFW Metroplex. You just got to be on the lookout for it. Calgary has 2 guys tied for first in points on their team as of right now. Those being Elias Lindholm and Johnny Goodrow, each at 11 points. Those are 2 guys that Dallas is definitely going to have to keep their eyes on. Their defensemen especially are going to have their hands full with these Calgary forwards, especially Lindholm and Goodrow. Because these guys, this whole team really is unselfish with how they handle the puck. And they can, they have several guys that can hurt any team. They have several guys that can score and score in bunches. They can score very effectively. So everyone really needs to step up from Miro Heiskanen all the way down to Thomas Harley, who made his first NHL appearance Tuesday night in Winnipeg against the Jets. So really excited to see, how this defense matches up with the Calgary Flames offense. And also on the flip side, Calgary has had some really good success on defense so far this season. They've shut some teams out and done really well. They've shut out the Detroit Red Wings, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Philadelphia Flyers. And so Dallas, if they're not careful, they could find themselves being the 4th team added to that list. Certainly hope that does not happen. But if Dallas, can't keep up what they've been doing over the past few games, which has been making strides offensively, they could find themselves in a very unfortunate situation, being the 4th team that gets shut out by Calgary this season. But hopefully we don't see that. It should be really interesting to see how our forwards handle playing against guys like Shillington, a young guy who has a lot of talent, but, some of our forwards, a lot of our forwards actually have a lot of veteran experience. So they may not be as quick, they may not be as agile, but what they lack in youthfulness, they make up for in veteran experience. And maybe they can get a mental edge or psychological edge, if you will, because they might not be able to get the physical edge at the end of the day. And that's just kind of the hard truth of this Dallas Stars team. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see how Bowness prepares for this game against the Flames. And to kind of touch on Rick Bowness, this is not on my rundown, but just something that's been circulating over the past few days. There is the Fire Rick Bowness crowd, which happens with a team like this, that has pretty high expectations around them in the preseason, yet, they're underperforming and they're underwhelming so far to start this season. And I think that is definitely the case with the Dallas Stars. And as much as maybe Rick Bowness has not been perfect at coaching this year, I think that that's a fair assessment to make. I don't think that he is the entire issue. And I also don't think firing him will fix anything. That's just my opinion. Everyone is entitled to how they feel and what they see. We can all watch the same game of hockey and see things differently, read things differently, what have you. But I just think, leaving Rick Bowness out of the picture and then trying to insert a new coach, unless it's just like a coach who is perfect and knows how to do everything and has never had any issues ever, which that coach doesn't exist in any sport. I just don't think that that's what needs to be done. One, Rick Bowness has been in this league for a very long time and knows, he knows what he's doing. And also ever since he has been thrust into the role as head coach for the Dallas Stars, he hasn't had very much time in normalcy, if you will. He got thrust in December 2019. A few months later, the world shuts down to a pandemic. He's having to coach his team in the bubble in Edmonton. That's difficult. He's having to coach his team the next season with people out with COVID, ice storms shutting down games for several days. So obviously there will come a time where maybe if the results aren't continuing to pan out, maybe the fire Rick Bowness crowd maybe draws a little more attention, and that conversation maybe actually needs to be had. I think as of right now, any fire Rick Bowness accusations are maybe an overreaction. Again, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but I think as of right now, Rick Bowness is trying to work things out, and I think we see from him and the players that they are not satisfied with what's happening either. I think this would be a different conversation if we were seeing what we're seeing on the ice night in and night out, but yet don't hear or see anything of an effort trying to fix what's happening. And I think we've both heard it. And just from reports that we've heard from TV broadcasts and social media, it seems like in practice that there are efforts being taken to fix these things. I know Daryl Razor was talking about on the broadcast against Winnipeg, how, the practice before, between their game against Ottawa on Friday and their game against Winnipeg, one of the last practices they had before they flew to Canada was one of the best that he's seen from this team pretty much all season since training camp. And so I think that means a lot for a guy like Razor to say that. I'm a guy who knows this game, who knows this team. And so I think, is Rick Bowness doing things perfectly right now? No, I don't think he is. But I don't think it's the time to call for him to be fired. I think it's a young season. A lot of hockey still have to be played, and I think they will figure things out. I'll get off my soapbox now. I'll stop defending Rick Bowness for now. I might have to in the future, but that's just my 2 cents on the matter. Again, like I said, everyone is entitled to how they feel. So don't let me dictate how you feel. That is just my 2 cents from the way I see things. Coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Stars, I want to close things out. Just kind of talking about some predictions overall for tonight's game versus the Calgary Flames. And to be quite blunt, this is going to be a tough game, I think. This Calgary Flames team, as I said at the top of the show, is very, very good. They've recently, been very, very hot to start the season, but they've been cooled down just a little bit. Me out here making all these hot, on fire, cooled down jokes. I love it. Calgary Flames are just built for puns. Their team name is. I love it. But their last game did end in an overtime loss to the Nashville Predators at home. Before that game, they had won 6 straight. So it's nice that Nashville has ended that. Maybe, slowed down the momentum for the Calgary Flames just a little bit. And it's nice that, we probably won't be adding to an 8th straight win. Like I said earlier, not only had they been winning 6 straight games, of those 3 of those games included shutouts at Detroit, at Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia. So 2 of those shutouts weren't even at home. They were on the road. As if getting a shutout in the NHL isn't hard enough already. Imagine trying to get one on the road with the other team's fans playing a factor. And I want to be optimistic and say that Dallas can win this game. But I just feel like best case scenario for the Stars in this game is that they escape with another overtime loss, that they are able to salvage a point, because I think Calgary likely wins this game 4-2, maybe 4-3. Again, obviously, as a fan of the Stars, not just someone who hosts a daily podcast about them, I'm actually a fan of the Stars. Have been watching them for quite a while now. I want to see them win this game, but realistically, I would not be surprised if we see the Flames come out on top. That being said, anything can happen any given night in the National Hockey League. And the Dallas Stars have been playing somewhat better over the past few games, obviously not getting the results that they want, but there has been progress shown, especially on the offensive side. So if the Stars do win, this would be a huge place for them to get their first regulation win, to snap this losing streak that they're on. This would be a huge statement win to show, that they're still relevant and that they're still hanging around. I feel like they're starting to drop out of a lot of people's conversations and starting to fall down a lot of power ranking lists. And so this would be a huge statement win if Dallas is able to come up on top. But just being realistic, I'm going to predict a 4-3 loss with Calgary winning this game. However, I do think Roope Hintz will score the first goal of the game for the Stars. And even if he doesn't score first, I think he will score, because it's his time. He is due for a goal. He deserves a goal because he has been putting forth the effort over the past several games and has not been able to hit pay dirt yet. But man, it's coming. It's close, and I really hope he can do it against Calgary, because that would be a huge moment for him to do it against a really good team with a really good defense. So really hope that Roope comes through, and I finally get my first goal prediction correct this season. And also, I want it just for the sake of Roope, not just for my own selfish reasons, but mainly for Roope to build his confidence. And as of the time of recording, a goalie has not been announced for Dallas. I personally would like to see Anton Hudobin in net for the Dallas Stars, just to give Braden Holtby a break, because Holtby has had a pretty tough go-around the past few games, especially on Tuesday. And Calgary's offense is one of the best in the NHL. And I think maybe, you let Holtby rest after playing on Tuesday. Hudobin's going to be a little fresher. Holtby, played pretty well against them, almost a year. And oh man, back in, August 2020, a year ago in the bubble. So maybe, he has their number a little bit because Holtby had an incredible playoff run. I don't know. I personally would like to see, or Hudobin, excuse me. I personally would like to see Anton Hudobin. I trust the coaches to put in who they think is going to be the best guy to help put them in a position to win this game. But I hope to see Anton Hudobin give Braden Holtby some rest. Let Braden Holtby play on Sunday in Vancouver in I guess a little revenge game for him because we got him from the Vancouver Canucks. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Stars. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for a full breakdown of tonight's game against the Calgary Flames. Thank you again for making Locked On Stars your first listen of the day. Now go make your second listen of the day, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with host Scott Cullen, who leans in on his decades of fantasy hockey insight and experience every day to help you be the expert of your fantasy league. His show is free and available on all platforms, so go check him out. Be sure to subscribe to the show and tell your friends about the show. Leave your review if you like what you hear. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Dane_Lewis. That's at DANE_LEWIS. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Stars. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoy the game tonight. Watch it on TV, relax, sit down, enjoy the game. Hopefully we'll have some good things to talk about tomorrow on another episode of Locked On Stars. See you tomorrow, Stars fans.